Welcome back to In Your Neighborhood. I'm your host, Charlotte Brown, and on today's show, we've been talking with Jason from Vigor Fitness all about health and fitness goals for 2017. And I thought we'd move in last segment and talk about nutrition, because that's also a very big piece of the puzzle when people are deciding to get healthy, get fit, maybe lose some weight. So how big of a piece of the puzzle is what you eat?
Well, I think in terms of overall health, it's probably the most important thing. We can try to minimize it, but in terms of health and wellness and feeling good, probably nutrition is probably the most important thing. Now, certainly in terms of if you have a body composition goal, meaning you want to shed some unwanted body fat, it's probably the most important part of the puzzle, regardless of exercise. And now you wouldn't try to win the Indy 500 on a scooter, right? So you still need to exercise along with you still need to build a nice big strong engine in terms of getting towards those goals, but nutrition plays a huge part.
Right. And when you look at what you put in and expending that, it's a lot quicker to eat 500, 1,000 calories, whatever it is, than the hours that it might take to then do the exercise to do that. So I guess that's another important part of that.
Yeah, there's lots of different ideas about whether if you can exercise, and people kind of count calories, and the nature of food, it's so processed, it's so refined, it's almost impossible to out-train a bad diet, right? So if your goal is to shed unwanted body fat, you have to pay attention to what you're eating,
right?
For certain.
And how important are calories? Sometimes people can get super obsessed, and you look through the decades and all the fad diets and things that's happened and all that kind of stuff. Should people be really focused on those numbers, or should they be more concerned with the quality and eating unprocessed foods, all that kind of stuff? What's your suggestion on that?
It's a good question, and I've had lots of people lose tens of pounds, hundreds of pounds, thousands of pounds over the course of helping people, and obviously no one lost just 1,000 pounds on their own, but lots of weight loss. And counting calories, it doesn't play that much of a part. Now you can kind of go old school if you want to be the person who measures everything and counts everything, but in today's society, is that really practical? Probably not. And so, you have to just develop some good supportive habits, things that you can build on. No one wants to spend the rest of their days counting calories. Obviously, it comes down to, at some point, what goes in versus what goes out, but it's more circular than it is in versus out. Right? So we know that calories, they play a part, but 2,000 calories of certain foods is not the same as 2,000 calories of other foods. And so, without going into a whole nutritional exam here, you have to understand that it's circular, right? It's not just in versus out.
Right, absolutely. So if somebody's starting, and we live in a very convenient society where it's so easy to go through a drive-through, eat out, grab something quick, maybe the choices even that we, buy at the grocery store to bring home, there could be some drastic changes that people need to make. Any tips on, cooking tips or eating tips that you would give if people are wanting to make some changes?
Well, you can get really drastic and just say, well, if it's in a box, don't eat it. If it's in the intersection of the grocery store, stick to the outside, right? There's lots of different things. If there's one tip that I would probably give to people just as a starting point, is I would build all your meals around protein.
Right.
There's been lots of studies that kind of will suggest that you can't really gain excess weight from eating too much protein.
Right.
It sounds kind of like one of those things like, does that make any sense? But really, in terms of excess calories and your blood sugar and sort of how that whole system gets out of whack, it's not from protein. It's from carbohydrates. And so those are the things that you kind of have to manipulate. But if there's one good habit that's going to help people to get the nutrients they need, it's the essential amino acids. Build your meals around protein, whether that be egg or chicken or tuna. If it had a mother, if it had a father, if it ran, swam, flew.
Can it be plant-based proteins as well?
That presents a whole new set of challenges. but certainly it's going to take a little bit more work and a little bit more research, but you can certainly fulfill all your essential and non-essential amino acids with plant-based protein. I mean, you really couldn't before, but now there's science has come a long way in terms of protein powders and amino acids, and protein powder specifically, and so you can do it now, but you're going to need some input and some help. It's a lot more work.
Yeah, and there's a lot of meat substitutes now. Like, it's really came a long ways in tofu and tempeh and all that good stuff as well. So yeah, so let's talk a little bit about maybe some health and fitness myths. So, you know, when people say weight training is going to make you bulky.
Well, that's an interesting one. You know, it's an interesting thing to think that happens. I mean, I think for your average fitness enthusiast, they can walk into a weight room and you're not going to see very many people who look too bulky. Occasionally, depending on what gym you go to, but most of the time, most of the people, you're going to see lots of fit, lean people in a weight room specifically. And you know, you rarely see men who look too bulky. So certainly women certainly don't have to worry about it.
Right. And how about if you don't feel like crap after a workout, you haven't worked out hard enough?
Yeah, there's a whole new sense of extreme fitness and super hard workouts. It's kind of taken over the landscape in the last 5 or 6 years. And it's pretty ridiculous. You don't need to, there's no reason for you to be lying on the floor, for you to be getting sick after you work out, or to working yourself into some kind of stupor. Certainly you need to put forth some effort, and you need to work out hard and enjoy your activity, and part of exercising and lifting weights or whatever you're doing is pushing yourself and getting out of your comfort zone a little bit, but you don't need to beat yourself up. That's for certain.
And what about doing cardio is the only way to lose weight?
You know, that's kind of one of the ones that we sort of all fell into that trap probably 10 or 15 years ago. I was as an athlete, as a boxer, and we always thought the best way to get down to the weight category was to run a lot. We sort of learned since then that sometimes with running, you make yourself a little bit more efficient. And that's great if you're going to be a runner, but sometimes in terms of shedding unwanted body fat, we know that probably aside from some dietary changes, the next best tool is high intensity interval training and or resistance training.
Right.
Not really worrying about the calories you're burning during your activity, but the ones you burn from, you know, an increase in your basal metabolic rate after the activity. Right. So again, the problem with running is that running is a great thing. It's but especially when people are carrying too much weight, it's, you know, every time you talk to a runner, they're like, how are you going? Are you running lately? And they're like, I'm hurt. Right. So that you have to have the right frame and you have to have the right surface. And a lot of times it's not that great for people.
Right. And looking at the alternatives as well as to just running, I guess there's some other activities like, you know, ellipticals or different things that people do that maybe aren't so hard on.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. Anytime you can do something that's going to improve your aerobic capacity, it's always good for you. It's always good for you. So there's always this kind of thing that swings back and forth from one extreme to the other. But you kind of have to use a little bit of common sense, and you don't have to do extreme things. And you don't have to neglect running altogether, but you gotta have to find a balance.
Right. And also that resistance training is important as we age, just to do things in everyday life. You know, like sometimes it's the fact of doing things so that you can always reach up into the cupboards and get your cans out of the cupboards, or being able to bend down, tie your own shoes and all that kind of stuff. Resistance training comes into play for all that stuff. Absolutely.
No question. I mean, whether or not you need to get up and down to go to the bathroom or the couch or a chair, I mean, you need to be able to figure out how to use specifically your hips and your posterior chain to get up and down off the floor. When you get stronger, you know, almost all athletic pursuits and athletic talents, they're always built around strength. Whether or not you're trying to be faster, you're trying to jump higher, you need to have a base of strength. And you can get that relatively easily, right? And sort of it's the one thing that you can do where it kind of maintains that joint mobility and stability. Most exercise regimes should be built around resistance training, however that looks.
Absolutely. Well, believe it or not, we are out of time. I think we probably could have did 3 shows on health and fitness. There's so much to cover when it comes to those topics. But if anybody has any questions about the things that we talked about today, or just their own health and wellness questions, what's the best way to get a hold of you, Jason?
Probably via email. You can look me up. You can contact me on Facebook as well.
Okay.
I'm not sure if there's an active Vigor Fitness website right now. I'd have to check. But
well, we'll put your email address up on the screen for sure, that if anybody has any questions for you, they can reach out. And definitely, Jason knows a lot about health and fitness. He's been in the profession for a long time. So I want to thank you, Jason, for being on the show today and teaching us some tips and ideas for kickstarting our health and fitness goals for 2017. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Be sure to watch next week with more on In Your Neighborhood.